Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Raad Life. Today I've got a special guest on, and the topic is a serious one, and one that actually has touched me personally in ways that I didn't expect, and quite rapidly, compounded by the fact that we were also now dealing with a pandemic, and that is dementia, Alzheimer's, senior, and aging. And the gentleman I have on is Jim McAleer, who a lot of you in Orange County who are involved in senior care and aging are familiar with him. He is the head of Alzheimer's OC, and I'm going to see if I can get him, coax him into basically talking about some of the stuff that they've been dealing with, some of the challenges that they've been going through, but also I want to talk about what does the future of aging look like. A lot of you know that, let's just say hello to Jim here. Hi, Jim, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I was just about to say that a lot of people know that I started doing the show as a sort of, I was asked to do it as a baby boomer focus about 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago now. And that what happenstance, and it was kind of a little tongue in cheek and stuff, was, it was a journey of aging. And, it's like we're exploring, and I think Paul Roberts, give a shout out to Paul Roberts from OC Talk Radio, is like, well, you're an age explorer. And I'm like, first of all, I feel very old now. Thank you for that title. Secondly, what does that really mean? And so we've had people on from the aging agencies and caregivers, and we've had examples of people that had pursued a pursuit of passion, whether they're artists or writers, people that have encore careers, along with other people like policymakers and so forth. But it's really interesting. I think we are at a crossroads, Jim, and I don't know, and I want to get us to that point of the conversation here in a minute. But I think we're at a crossroads where, what does the future of aging look like, right? I mean, we've talked about the impact of people being healthier, respectively, as they get older, that they're not their parents' senior, right? That the way they live is they're not necessarily slowing down. They may be scaling down a little bit, but they're not slowing down. The real estate models of sell your large house and move into a small condo in the middle of the desert in many cases does not really apply anymore. There's a lot of things that have been kind of changing the narrative of aging. But with this pandemic, I think what it has highlighted in terms of seriousness to this topic, it could be really an interesting time for us to kind of delve into that. What is the future of aging? But before we talk about the future, go ahead, Jim.
You're not necessarily talking about one population.
No, I'm not.
When we talk about seniors, you have a group of a subset that are active and in good health and over the traditional age, if you will. We're not just living longer, healthier, we're living longer, period.
Right.
So there are people with multiple complicating health conditions who are still living into their 90s despite the inability to be active. So you're seeing disability,
longer.
Folks with different disabilities live longer. So that's a huge part of this baby boom buckle that started in 65, right? The first boomer turned 65 in 2011. Yeah. Now we're seeing this massive growth in that age group. And it means we're seeing more active seniors, we're seeing more disabled seniors, we're seeing more poor seniors, more at risk of food insecurity, transfer of wealth. All of those complexities are staring us in the face.
One of the largest growing category of homeless.
It is. And in Orange County, 65 and older is the only demographic that is growing in this county. Every other age demographic is actually reducing while the 65 and older category is growing.
Yeah, and if somebody who's listening doesn't believe that, go take a look at how many elementary schools have been mothballed. Basically, talk to the districts, right? It's a very fascinating time, and I'm going to ask this question. I already know what the answer is because we have been harping on this for as long as I've been involved with seniors, since 2008 at least. Okay, and that is, are we ready to handle what's coming?
Well, again, that's a broad question. Short answer, absolutely not.
Okay.
If you look at just my part of the universe of aging, memory loss and dementia, it's the most expensive disease condition to support a person through, right? So if you're talking $72,000 a year for institutional care, which I'm not recommending, but it is a place a lot of our folks go, it's going to cripple Medicare as these numbers of people just go massively larger. So we're not looking yet at the innovations like, well, what about paying for in-home care so people can stay in their homes longer? What about providing respite for caregivers so they can not burn out and blow a gasket? Until we start looking at those innovations of care, until we start looking at becoming entrepreneurial in how we actually utilize our healthcare resources, we are going to be hopelessly unprepared. If you look at what funding is available for basic services, we're still dealing with food insecurity, housing insecurity, homelessness. We're not getting to quality of life stuff, right? There's not a lot of grants out there to say, let's help these folks really engage in life or re-engage with work if they want or whatever. There's not a lot of money for that. We're still focused on survival for seniors.
Yeah, to say nothing about preventive, right? I mean, we don't even operate that way. We operate at a triage level, with limited resources, and then, hold it together with twine and rubber bands. I mean, in some cases, right? So and we're joking, we're laughing, but it's a very serious matter when you start looking at the numbers. And I know you're very, very acutely aware of this, and the fact that with increased diagnosis capability, that also is increasing the number of people that are now diagnosed with things like Alzheimer's, dementia, and even within that category of memory loss, there's so many other layers. It's not a one-size-fits-all, which again, are we really addressing these issues of aging and challenges that people as they age are dealing with in the nuances of a one-size-doesn't-fit-all, or are we trying to basically just use blanket approaches? Have you noticed a difference in that? You've been involved in this for a long time.
In this gig for 16 years, talk about senior. So I think pilot projects happen all the time, right? We do them, other people do them, that deal with a specific subset of the aging population, or a disabling condition, or an ethnicity, sexual orientation, income level. There's a lot of those kind of pilot things that are designed.
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me there's diversity in Orange County?
Oh, come on now. We have the second largest population of Vietnamese outside of Saigon.
Right.
We have a ton of folks, and I'll go by languages here, who speak Farsi, Tagalog, Korean, Japanese, several different versions of Chinese. And I could go on. I think people make a mistake when they think of Orange County as the Real Housewives, right? It is that in places, but it is also incredibly diverse from an income standpoint. Right. We have a huge low-income population as well as an affluent population. From an ethnic standpoint, from a gender identification standpoint, sexual orientation standpoint, yes, there are those here who are gay and lesbian. It is not what is shown on TV, I think, the most convenient.
My mind just went to, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy, and a version of OC Housewives that's a senior version, like Golden Girls, right?
I'd watch both of those.
Yeah, I would watch both of them too, and I think we could probably pitch them to the aging population that's happening. But the reason I was being facetious, guilty as charged about saying diversity in Orange County is because it is important, and it's always like it doesn't surprise me, but it's almost a sad reality that we whether because we don't have the how should I put it, the breathing space to really look at these things in the nuances and diversity that they occurred. Like, it's not a one size fits all. If you're dealing with somebody who's elderly, who maybe basically has is religious or spiritual in their own faith, and you have a caregiver that's coming in, everything from nutritional habits to appropriate behavior to, prayer times to whatever it is,
right.
Whether you're Buddhist or you're Baha'i or you're whatever, those are all nuances that, especially as you are older and you're being cared for, become even more meaningful for you.
Right. And increasingly tend to be taken away from you without your desire, permission, or wants. So if you look at, for example, what often happens for us is we want to serve somebody who identifies as Latino. Let's say they identify as Mexican Latino. So we take a really nice training that's in English and we translate it. That doesn't work. You have to start from the ground up with who your audience is in mind and deal with cultural ideation, all of those kinds of things. Because what reaches me is not going to reach a woman who was raised in Juarez, who is 65 years old, who's been in this country for 20 years.
You mean Google Translate doesn't just do it for me?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, it's a start. It's better than nothing, but it's certainly not the
But
way to
but
go to expanding.
but it is important. I mean, and that's language and communication, right? I mean, to say nothing about sort of respectful layers of communication in different cultures and so forth. And this is not. I mean, this isn't necessarily only limited to aging or our our field that we're talking about here. It is also in terms of legal services, et cetera, et cetera. And people do suffer from this. So I know you guys basically, for example, on your website, you've got multiple languages. I mean, you guys try to really basically go there, right? How has it been for your outreach effort? And we know a couple of ladies that are very involved in that kind of component for you guys. I love them dearly, but for all that they do, how's that been now that you are basically been limited? You don't have the ability to physically engage with your clients, whether it is in the provision of the service or the educational component. How has it been?
So it's a lot about access, right? I mean, everything we're talking about in this last section is about access. If you only speak Tagalog and materials are not in your language, then you have no access. They might as well not exist. If you don't have access to a computer and that training is in Zoom, it might as well not exist. So we find that the folks who have the most limited access are low income, multicultural, where English is either a second language or they don't have English as a language, and then frail seniors. So we have a bunch of those folks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I think our team does, its very best to do, is to reach out in person, which is super tough in COVID. But in these communities, it's like the Promotora model, right? You go knock on their door. I mean, that's how you reach some of these folks. But I acknowledge that the people we need to reach the most are the hardest to reach. We absolutely try. We have tons of programs in all the languages I was mentioning, and not just programs, materials, access points, care consultation. It's just really tough to get to people. There's a trust factor that has to be built. We tend to do it a lot in partnerships. So we'll work with Okapica, for example, the Orange County Asian Pacific Islander group, or El-Anon's, or any one of a number of different groups, Mecca, because they already have established relationships with a lot of these populations we're trying to reach. So we tend to try and conduit through the folks who are already part of. They look like, they sound like, they understand the cultural idioms. We don't try and reinvent those wheels. We just try and get our information out through those. That's worked out pretty well. It's just not enough, but there's still a lot to do.
Well, I want to try to just pivot for a second and talk about something that just occurred to me. Is you also maybe you're suffering from lack of resources, maybe in one capacity, and part of it is going through this change, this paradigm shift, if you will, with the way what we're used to doing things, and now basically we are unable to do things the way we used to do them, right? I used to be able to get in my car and basically drive everywhere, and I had my choice of transportation. Now all of a sudden I can't drive anymore as a senior. Now I got to basically get used to basically getting accustomed to alternative form of transportation, or I basically sit at home. Like, I mean, what I'm saying is there's a major shift happening when it comes to resources. However, I would think that a positive outcome to an unfortunate situation, such as people losing their work or being furloughed or that kind of stuff, that you might actually have the ability to draw on maybe more volunteers that would satisfy that sort of those diverse categories or those nuances. Has that materialized or not?
No, it hasn't. And I hear the theory, but there are a number of roadblocks. To manage, train, vet volunteers takes manpower. So that means taking manpower away from current programming to do that. Okay, that would make sense long-term perhaps. When the mediums that we have for those volunteers to work in are mostly remote, I don't have enough work for them. I don't have enough established conduits to reach these folks to effectively deploy. I can't deploy all the volunteers I have. We have a fair number of volunteers who culturally identify with the people who we're trying to serve. It's hard to put them to work. I have to make sure they have a computer, they know how to use it, all those kinds of things. But we talked about this earlier, and I think we are going to have to continue to learn how to reinvent ourselves. And that's one area where we're going to have to grow if we're going to be effective. If we're going to continue to do at least part of our work remotely, we've got to get better at reaching people, making sure they have technology that they need, and those kinds of things. So
well, and learning how to do things in a different way and a new way is one of the hardest things for a nonprofit to do. I mean, you have.
I'd say it's one of the hardest things for anybody to do.
Yes, but I've served on enough boards to tell you that it's a very interesting thing, because I think people, their heart is in the right place. They get engaged into the process, into the thing. They get comfortable in how they're basically satisfying both their contribution to the effort and how things are happening. And you see it on occasion where people just basically, you guys are just moving into too much of the next generation, and I got to walk away because I can't deal with it anymore. But this is really, I mean, and it seems almost repetitive and redundant at this point after 6 months or more of dealing with this. COVID may have caused damage. I'm not taking away from that, but it has also done something else that I think is more prominent in my mind. It has accelerated so many things. It has accelerated the need for change. It has accelerated, a shift in the economy. It has accelerated economic engines that we should be looking at versus the ones we have gotten almost complacent and dependent upon, right? It's really crazy in that capacity. Now, you guys are operating pretty much, I would assume, in a lot of cases remotely, right? I mean, you look like you.
Certainly, with the exception of our, I'm in the office a couple of days a week, with the exception of our residential programs, which obviously are not remote. But one of the things that we were somewhat lucky in timing, we're a very nimble organization for a nonprofit. When you think about 5 years ago in December, when we rebranded ourselves as a local organization, Alzheimer's Orange County, then immediately took over an adult day center, then it took over another adult day center, then took over 72 beds of residence, all in the last 5 years. That rapid growth is not just growth. It also means that at every step we had to look at our infrastructure, our organization, how we do what we do. So when COVID hit, my folks are used to bobbing and weaving. There is no attachment to one way to do things. Change is not a four-letter word in our world. It's not always about the business or the nonprofit of the organization. Sometimes it's about the community not wanting what they've always had to change to something different. Right. Well, if you're trying to serve new people, sometimes it's just endemic to that change.
That's a very interesting point, Jim. I don't know that I've ever thought about it that way, but you're right. It's not just a reluctancy on the organizational structure to basically change, but it's also the people that are on the receiving side of it. That you're asking them to accept a different model of being served and cared for.
But it's also, as you said, it's changing whether we like it or not. And it's not probably, I firmly believe, not just probably, that it will not change back to the way it was in January of last year. Not ever. Yeah. There will always be some hybrid things that will result from this, and they don't have to be bad. It's time to start thinking about what it's going to look like, because sooner or later, the restrictions will start to lift, whatever stage vaccines are and all that. But it's not going to go back to what we remember from before. Our fundraising will be different. Our service delivery will be different. The needs of our caregivers and clients are already different and will continue to morph and change. So it's interesting. The other positive thing, I think, I'm not a fan of the current political situation. I don't like the divisiveness, the meanness, all that stuff.
I agree with you 100%.
I like how many people are speaking their mind. Granted, I'd like them to be a little more polite about it and listen a little more. But I like the fact that I see more engagement in the political process, in the standing up for yourself process sort of thing, because we tend to be so passive about policy. And the reality is policy drives so much of our lives that it is good to see at least people saying, hey, I don't agree with that. I agree with that. I want to do this. I don't want to see that done. Let's hope we can channel into something a little more civil.
But again, it's a two-edged sword. I mean, the civility component is super critical, right? I mean, the fact that along the way we lost the ability to have differing opinions, but basically not want to try to shoot each other across the street for them, right? I mean, it's the civility factor. I will tell you though, what I also find interesting during this period is that we used to have a lot of noise. There was a lot of proverbial noise, always on, right? I mean, somebody asked me the other day, said it was somebody younger, and they're like, do you believe that the good old days, which what is the good old days exactly, right? But it's a moving target. The good old days were harder or easier right? And I said, you know, what's interesting is I don't know that they're any different. I think every generation has a parent that basically thinks their child is spending way too much time in front of either the TV or on the Game Boy or at the pinball machine, or and listening to rock and roll is going to basically warp your mind. I mean, every generation has its own version of that. But I think what's interesting is there is a slight difference, and that is that it used to be back in the day, whatever that is again. We used to have some space between things. There was space. Yep. There was room between things. And then we got into a point where literally there was no room. And in big part because of stuff like this, that basically it almost enslaved us, right? We enslaved ourselves with them. But again, another byproduct of this period, I think, is we were forced to basically slow down. And in the course of doing that, we now have a little bit more ability to reflect, a little ability to maybe think deeper. To your point, maybe we're now basically a little bit more, not so much opinionated, but determined and confident and clear on where we stand. And again, it's just a matter of how we would express it. And again, it's on everything. I agree with you. I would rather have a community that is overly engaged than one that's under-engaged. And I happen to live in one down called San Clemente down where I am. I mean, you want to talk about over-engagement, just give me 2 minutes of your time and I'll take you to a city council meeting. You'll find out for yourself.
I've seen them.
Yeah. Look at him shaking his head. No, thank you. I'll stay where I am. Let's talk about your caregivers. Let's talk about what you guys are doing for that, because I mean, I can imagine that it's been very different for them. They have a lot of times people don't realize that, when you're in that space, it's very demanding. You don't just put your hat on, take it off. They're very involved, and do you have a personal relationship with the people that you're caring for, right? So how have they been? How have they fared through this?
So, like most things, it's really hard to sum it up as a they, right? Because every
we're generalizing.
Is completely different. Most of them have lost their forms of respite. Let's say that a husband and wife are living together in their 80s, and their daughter used to sometimes provide respite. Well, she's lost her job, or she's now homeschooling her kids through Zoom. And I can go through a million different ways which they've lost respite. Perhaps they're still working and either their job's at risk or they've had to relearn how to do it remotely. They've had to figure out how to get groceries into their house. Maybe never having used Instacart or not knowing what it is or not having good internet access or whatever. Right. So I think there's just a great deal of fear. I think that has diminished somewhat, by the way, as we've gone through this and people understand what the scope is more like, right? That there are 167 people in the hospital today in Orange County. And while 50,000+ have screened positive, we have lost less than 2,000. I'm not minimizing COVID in any way, shape, or form. Wear your mask. But I think for seniors, it's not the same level of crisis that it was at the very beginning when there were so many unknowns. So it's a mixed bag. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
It's interesting, right? I mean, somebody could be caring for somebody and now all of a sudden their reality, their life, and sort of that safeguard that allowed them to perform that is now in jeopardy. They don't know where their job is. They don't know, where they're going to be able to provide. You also have, like you were talking about, income disparity. You've got people that have never used these apps that we take for granted. And over time, obviously, the human condition adapts as much as possible, right? So we learn some of these new skills. But it's not just a given. It's not just a given that people out there are dealing with the same challenges they were dealing with before when it comes to this.
Picture you're the member of your family that you love dearly. My partner, Chris, and I spent the first 2 months of COVID 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the same house.
Yeah.
It is amazing there's not a graveyard in the backyard. Now, he didn't ask me the same question 30 times in an hour. I didn't have to assist him with toileting or bathing or any of those things. So even though you may dearly love the person you're providing care for, 24/7 is a lot. And as we've gone further and further in this process and more time, I think people are being whittled away.
Jim, I have not shared this personally on any of the shows, and I have been really kind of struggling a little bit with a desire to do this, but I have not, and I'm trying to think what the appropriate format would be. That's really what's holding me back. But I will share with you personally. I mean, a lot of people that have been following me and following the show know that my mother passed away in May. My dad, which basically my mother was a primary caregiver, and she was a friggin' saint. I don't know how this woman basically did it, because my dad is a handful, just not in terms of, a grumpy old man, kind of like, Walter Matthau handful, but he's dealing with a lot of stuff. He's got dementia. He is not far gone enough to basically not have the frustration maybe that comes with it. He's aware that he's forgetting. There's these nuances that we were just talking about earlier. His short-term memory is, which is not unusual. His short-term memory is what's really at stake. He used to be an avid reader. Now he just basically constantly creases the page and just flips through the pages and doesn't really read. He's dealing with frustration. He's dealing with depression because he lost his spouse of over 50 years. He's in a house that he built, but he's now feeling a little bit imprisoned by it because he's really not doing anything. And then us as children, and I'm grateful, and a shout out to my sister that you could have siblings that have very different mindsets of how and what should be done, right? I'm grateful that that's not the case in my case. But you said whittling away, and that is a very, very good way to describe it. I mean, it's been over 12 weeks. Okay, we're going into like another month now, and more weeks get added, and it's a marathon, but it's not even a short marathon. It is, because the alternative of not being in the marathon is that basically your loved one has passed. And even then, you're now basically dealing with the fallout of all of that. But while you're going through it, I've learned that I'm a lot more resilient than I thought I was. I've learned that I'm a lot more patient than I thought I was. And I also realized that I needed a couple of places where, I could basically go and scream because you're right. It whittles away. And that's nothing to say about, you're running your own business. You're trying to continue to be engaged in your community and do what you do that gives you joy and sense of certain fulfillment. You've got your own personal relationships that are now basically have been skewed and changed because of the reality, right? And and what prepares you for this? I don't know that anything can prepare you for this. But when you're now basically additionally isolated because of the safety needs and the social distancing, it just compounds the issue.
So it doesn't come with an encyclopedia. I've done this job for
Why, damn it? Why?
Well, I like to think we're the encyclopedia. We just have to figure out how to get people to us. So I've done this job for 16 years. For me, that's a long time. 16 years. So you would think I would have it down, right? So my sister-in-law had younger onset dementia. She passed away this past April at 50 years old.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. And I managed a great deal, the majority of her care for the last 6-9 months of her life. And I did not know what I was doing. Now, could I have told you what I think resources are and where to go? Sure. Did I know where resources were? Absolutely. But the emotional side of trying to care for her teenage children, her husband, all of those, my part, all of those things, there is no way to know in advance how you're going to do that. And there's many a night where I sat in my backyard and cried my tears over my beer because it was just awful, right? But at the end of the day, I think you said it. I was stronger than I thought I was. This journey was harder than I thought it was. And I've been through grandparents with it. I've watched lots of people who lose loved ones. Some of them are very close to me. But doing it firsthand is a whole different world.
And you think that's what it was that was different about this, is that you were like right there the first.
It's my family. There's no one step removed, because no matter how much I love the people that we work with, I still go home to my house.
Right.
Well, I went home to my house and there she was.
Right.
So
yeah. You were never off. I mean, it's stuff that's small, but the way you respond to it becomes even very amplified. Like yesterday, I mean, first of all, let me tell you, I mean, this, I'm going to share it with the people that are listening. It is an arduous exercise to filter through very well-meaning care agencies, caregivers, find a fit, right? And then not only find a fit, but then find a fit that will then last as your you now get settled into the caregiving. And, you know, it took us a good almost 8 weeks to even get the thing scheduled to where we had almost around the clock coverage.
Right.
And the reason why we did that, and grateful to be able to do it financially, grateful to be able to have the wherewithal 20 years ago when we built their house for them, that we incorporated things that I knew professionally to, you know, have an aging capability in that house. I mean, I walked around for about 3 weeks when this thing first started, Jim, saying, I have no idea how people do this in a condo or in an apartment, right? You know, and
went up and downstairs,
and with an up and down stairs. So very grateful for that. But then again, you know, something like your father's coughing, and you're like, well, was this just coughing, or is he, you know, coming down with a cold? He's got a whole slew of medications that he's on. Can I give him emergency? What about the cough medication? Is it going to have an implication? Is it going to have, you know, who do I call at 9 o'clock at night to get that clear the answer? I can't get the answer until in the morning. I mean, these things are very real, and they're going to become real for more and more people as we go forward. So I appreciate the candor and the vulnerability, Jim, by the way. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, and my family has not only given me permission to do that, they've encouraged me to do that, because they believe the only way that we'll see change is if more people talk about what you and I are talking about today, that it is personal, it is visceral, and it is tough. It is tough. So yeah, I think for both of us, I mean, we're walking the walk.
Well, and you know, you and I are sitting here as examples, but, you know, I look around, there's a lot of like Gen Xers, there's a lot of, you know, bridge generations, a lot of multi-generational households that are really, you know, whether they became multi-generational because of COVID, because they pulled together, because before then they were able to maintain the connection, but, you know, physically be apart. And then now they needed to basically make sure that their small circle was clear and COVID negative. And basically now that was the way to basically care for people. I mean, you know, your whole life basically stopped in multiple ways. I think it is our duty to share that. I really do. I think it really is. I want to ask you something that I don't want to really dwell on it, but I want to ask you something that kind of caused you and I to basically connect on and schedule you know for you to basically be on the show. And thank you for doing that. I know you. I want to acknowledge that, because it's not like you got a lot of time. You've got a lot of work on your plate under normal circumstances. I cannot imagine what it's like now, and so I really appreciate taking the time. But I want to talk about this. What do we do to actually also have this topic and things like, you know, reduced cognitive capabilities and things of that nature, right? What do we do? How do we go about making sure that this doesn't become a joke? That this is you know, this has dignity. That this is addressed in society, not just in the policy side of things. What do we need to do? Are we just going to have to wait until everybody basically is touched by this for them to get it?
Well, if you look at who's touched by it, most people already are at some level, maybe you know, grandparent rather than parent, but it definitely hits everywhere. But I would posit that it's not really about addressing dementia. It's about addressing the broader issues of aging, because if we did it more holistically, we would be addressing the issues of dementia.
I mean, and for those who are wondering, like, why are we talking around this topic? Look, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I'm not gonna call the person out, but there was an incident recently locally where somebody basically put out some form of banner that basically called out an issue of dementia and used it as almost like a political whipping board, you know, of undermining the credibility of somebody. And the irony is, it doesn't really matter which candidate it is, right? I mean, people know that it's probably about the general election. It doesn't really matter which candidate it is. Whatever happens in November, we will have the oldest president we've ever had in our lives. Right. And so the issues, ironically, apply across the whole gamut. And I've been looking at elected officials. I got to tell you, there's a lot of bodies with a lot of people that are approaching that age if they're not already there. So how do we as a society, it's a 64, you know, it's $1 million question. How do we as a society show reverence to people as they get older, show dignity?
So the problem with that sign, that banner on somebody's house, it's not that they raised the issue of, does this person have a cognitive impairment? It's that they used it as a pejorative, like, look at the nasty dementia patient sort of thing.
Right.
So it's the respect piece that was missing, certainly for me. I think that as more of us age, we will be more vocal. My hope is that we'll be stronger advocates. It's, as I mentioned earlier today, I like the fact that people are using their voices. I wish we could figure out how to mobilize more senior voices, because seniors are a huge voting bloc. They vote a lot.
Yeah. So
figuring out how to give them the tools they need to tell their elected officials, don't cut my Medicare, or whatever their belief system leads them to believe about healthy aging in place in their homes. I think that's probably the most highest likelihood of success, is if those folks figure out how to dance with their dollars, with their electeds, and how to make their voices heard repeatedly.
Is it enjoyable still for you to go in every day?
I love my job more than I can say. I hate my job on occasion. I would never want to do anything else. I mean, I'm stuck here with this thing because I'm so passionate about it. I really believe in what we do. But it's hard to watch people go through this day after day. It's tough. You know, these are people that you build a relationship with, that I do. Donors who are losing their father, and then their mother gets it 3 years later. I have a staff member who I've known for almost 20 years who has worked for us for 6. Well, his mom got it 3 years ago. That's tough. But I truly do believe that we help. I believe that our organization does help people in this process, and that is a really, really good feeling. I just don't think we're doing enough yet. So until we're doing enough or there's a cure, I'm here.
You know what?
If they'll let me stay, you never know.
Yeah, no, I think they'll let you stay. But I think I know you well enough. I don't think you'll ever feel like you're doing enough. And I think that's part of those characteristics of a lot of people that are giving and in this field of caring and giving and caregiving. We never feel like it's enough. And sadly, there's a lot more need than there is resources and people to basically help. So that will probably be the case forever. I do want to make sure that people at least realize that, if you have any questions, if you are unclear, this is a great organization. These are very, very, very near and dear to me people that do this work every day. And, even COVID couldn't stop them from doing it. Right. So check out the website at Alzheimer's, alzoc.org. Basically, there's also a helpline, and we put it on here, but I don't know if it's going to be clear when people are watching this. It's 844-HELP ALZ, or 844-435-7259. Did I get that right, Jim?
You did. Help Alls. 844 Help Alls.
Help Alls. So, Alls will be there and they will help you. They'll pick up the phone and they'll help you. And a lot of this, from personal experience, I'll tell you, and I hear this all the time, is you'll never know enough about this. So you need to reach out for people that are willing to be there and help you. You need the support. We all do. There's no shame in not going it yourself. In fact, I would suggest that you don't go it yourself and you do seek out help. The resources are there. People like Jim that have dedicated their lives to this are there. And again,
if I may, you don't know what you don't know. So if you think that there's not help for you with our organization, well, let us prove you wrong. Call us and tell us what problems you are facing and see if we can help with even one of them. One less problem is a good day. But we tend to be the encyclopedia. We know all kinds of referral sources. The majority of our services are free, except for our residential and day programs. So yeah, give us a shout.
Yeah, definitely reach out to them, and you can always reach out to the show as well, and we'll try to connect you with some people. But don't go it alone. I mean, it's okay. We're all going through this. It's almost a cliche to say we're all in this together, but we are. We're all in this together, and you don't have to go through this alone. In fact, you probably won't be as able to support those people, those loved ones that you're trying to care for, if you burn yourself out. And that is one of the main real dangers when you find yourself all of a sudden in a caregiving position, is that you take it all on, you almost deal with it like it's a task that you're going to basically achieve and complete, and it isn't. It's an open-ended thing that will take a long time. I said it earlier, that it's a marathon, but it's a long marathon. So Jim, I appreciate you, my friend. I really do. Give my best. Absolutely. Give my best to everybody there. Love you guys dearly. I hope, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank
I
you.
really am.
And I'm sorry you're having to go through this, but you remember we're there when you need it.
I do. I know how to get hold of you guys. Thank you, Jim, very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. You too. Bye.